Welcome to our weekly program, The Inside Story of Chabad in America through the Mindel Archives. I want to share with you a letter of a Rav in America, in a big city. He has a large shul, and he asked the Rebbe a question. He asked the Rebbe something. He writes like this. He writes that he's an Orthodox Rav, and he has a large shul, many members, and he learns Daf Yomi every day, and he also gives a class for ladies twice a week. He teaches adult education classes, and he does more activities. But he has a question by the Rebbe on Shabbos, when he says a drosha, when he says a speech. So what should be his theme? What should be his speech about? He writes, should it be Parshas HaShavua, by the portion of the week? With Meforshim, you can talk about that. Should it be tzaddikim, stories of tzaddikim? Should he teach about Kabbalah, what Chassidus, Musar, or Minyoni Diyema, current events? What should be? So he wants to hear what the Rebbe has to tell him. So when he says, when he learns Daf Yomi, he knows, he learns Gemara. He gives a class to ladies, he gives a class on Pirkei Avos, he gives a class on other things. But this is something that he has to speak, and he wants to know what the Rebbe thinks. So the Rebbe answers him like this. You can speak whatever you want. First of all, the Rebbe says, it has to be Yotzei min Halev, Nichnas al Halev. That's number one. Then people will accept what you're saying, or they will listen. Also, speak whatever you want. When the parents that come home with children, Shabbos, after your speech, after davening, and they will sit by the Shabbos table, like you have to sit by the Shabbos table, like you come home from shul, you sit and you eat the Suda Shabbos. And you will say over what you heard. And you will live with this. And the children will. A whole week. That's all it counts. If it comes down a maaseh b'poyel, that's the ikar. It's not just listening. Many people just listen and they forget, and that's nothing. But if it's yotzei min halev, and they will learn a lesson, that's important. It doesn't matter what you say. You can say, if it's through a story, it's a story. If it's Musar, it's Musar. Kabbalah, it doesn't matter what. As long as they will live a maaseh b'poyel. So, now this letter was now printed in Learning Spirit. Mitzvah Hashem, by the way, in about a few weeks, we'll have the 6th volume coming out, but this letter will be probably in the other, maybe 7th or 8th volume. I didn't put it in this, it's already in print. So what do we see, number one, from this Heroah, from this lesson? And this is a Heroah, I think, to speakers. Not that I'm giving Heroah to speakers, it's according to the Rebbe. This men, ladies, and Baruch Hashem, in Chabad, we have many speakers in Chabad, more than other places, a lot of speakers, that they should know that from the Rebbe, that the ikar is maaseh b'poyel. When you learn, let's say, online, so you're learning Torah, you're learning Gemara. So you don't have to have a lesson. You're learning Torah. As we said once in our program, that the Frierdiker Rebbe said, a drosha is not, you're not yotzei Torah with a drosha. He's speaking, it's a lecture. When you learn Chassidus, learn the Kutesichas, this is Torah, Kutesichas, Maimorim. But when a person lectures, they have to know, the ikar is, what is the Poyel Mamish? Many lectures lecture philosophy. They have their own ideas, and nothing is B'Poyel. So most of the time, they can speak, let's say, half an hour, 27 minutes is what their philosophy is, and 2 minutes is maybe the Hera, and the Hera should be the Ikir. This is what we see from here. Speaking about this, I will have to say something else. And I once mentioned it, and maybe I'll mention it again. And this is by the Mital Rebbe. It's a whole story. You can always click back to listen to the entire story, but I'm going to take out the Nekuda. The Mittel Rebbe told to a lecturer, a speaker, you should be like a bee, not like a spider. What's the difference? A spider makes a web, and the web comes from the inside of the spider. What does that do? Nothing. It kills flies, insects. It doesn't accomplish anything. The web comes from this spider. A bee makes honey. A bee doesn't make honey. Honey doesn't come from a bee. If honey would come from a bee, honey would be treif, because a bee is treif. How do you get honey? The bee goes around collecting nectar, collecting flowers, and it makes honey. But the honey is not from a bee. And it becomes sweet. If you, the Rabbi tells him, are going to be like a spider, you're going to speak, but you'll speak your own philosophy, your own ideas. You have ideas. Then people won't accept it. It's just eigene. But if you're going to be like a bee, you're going to run to collect. You're going to learn Musar. You're going to learn Chassidus. You're going to learn Nigla. You're going to learn Ma'aseh Tzadikim. And you'll gather like a bee. You'll go around. And you will speak what you learned from Sfarim. It'll become sweet. People are going to listen to you. And people will accept it. And that's a good hero. That's a good lesson. Our Rebbe says in a place that even that Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe, who can compare himself to the Alter Rebbe, that the Alter Rebbe says in the Shabbat and Tanya, that Tanya, he didn't take it from himself. He says, Melukot mipi Sfarim u'mipi Seifrim G'dayshi Elyon. He also gathered. He was like a bee, he gathered. He went to the Shalah, he looked in the Shalah, he looked in the Arizal, he looked in Zohar, and that's how he wrote the Tanya. So a person should know that whenever you speak, don't speak your own ideas. Speak what you gathered. Number 3, and listen, and this is what the Rebbe says. It says in Pirkei Avos, I think, Kol ha'omer b'shem omerei mevi geula le'olam. When a speaker speaks, say where you got it from. Very important. And I know that sometimes, Baruch Hashem, I mean, I can tell you personal, I give letters of the Spirit, letters from the Rebbe only. And many times I hear online, people speak and people ask questions, certain speakers, and they answer 100% good. But people think that that's their own, that it comes from them. Let them say they read it in the Rebbe's letter, which was in the letter in spirit, or another sefer that he had. But you have to always say where you got it from. It's very important. The Rebbe always brings Mekayim where he got it from. So talking about that, I want to read you a very short telegram from the Frierdiker Rebbe to somebody, and the Frierdiker Rebbe was very upset that somebody wrote and it wasn't 100% accurate, and they should have checked it with him, whatever it is. This is written in English, and as you know, the Frierdiker Rebbe couldn't write English. So every English letter that came out from the Frierdiker Rebbe, he asked Rabbi Mindel to write it for him. So this is in English. It's a little bit, the papers are old. I can hardly see here, but that written to someone, to a editor. He writes like this. Apparently he wasn't correct in a few things, and he didn't say where it's from. I'm shocked. The Frierdiker Rebbe writes. The Frierdiker Rebbe signs this. I'm shocked at your high-handed censoring of my message. No editor has any judicial and certainly no moral right whatever to distort a message of any person by transmitting it wrongfully. You may have the right to refuse altogether to publish anything you don't wish to, but not to suppress that part which you don't like to hear. I feel morally dwindled by this high-handed editorial operation, and I demand on moral and judicial grounds that my message be reprinted in the next edition, verbatim in the way submitted to you, with an apology for the wrongful transmission of my message. Previously, it was in Nissan 20 issue. I think that this was from Talks and Tales that my father-in-law wrote. The Rebbe checked it over in the Rebbe, and he didn't do the right thing. So he should do the right thing. This is the Nissan 20 issue. I request that you go to the Telegram and the fake Rebbe signs. How the fake Rebbe was careful. How when you say something or when you write something, has to be 100%. Now here also, many times, speakers, they say stories, and sometimes it's not 100% accurate. And I know facts, because there's certain documents that I have, and I compared it that they say stories from it was Feidik Rebbe, and it wasn't 100% the way it is. You have to say a story 100%. And this thing was written April 25th, 1943. Now, on the other side here, I have another one. There's many letters, but I have a letter to the Jewish press from Rabbi Chadakov signed. In your issue of today's date, there appears an article on page 15 under the caption, "Let My People Go," the story of Passover by Leo Gartenberg. We are amazed to find that this is verbatim reproduction, word for word, paragraph for paragraph, from our copyright publication, The Complete Story of Passover by Nissim Mindel. Needless to say, in addition to this being a most unethical practice, to say the least, it is also a clear infringement of our copyright. Inasmuch as this sort of thing has happened before in your weekly, we are impelled to reiterate our instance that you, it's a whole page, that you respect our copyright material and under circumstances use any of our material without first obtaining our permission to do so. If you wish to continue the said story in your publication, you may do only if due credit is given to the source, namely by special permission of the Merkez Elyon Chinuch from Complete Story of Passover by Nissim Mindel, or from Nissim Mindel, because he was the head, of course. We are not prepared to tolerate any future infringement of our copyright publication, and Rabbi Chadakov signs. So anyways, over here we see that when you speak, and we see from the Rabbi, we see from the Freike Rabbi, or when you write, it has to be 100%. There's always a word, they always say, I heard, don't believe what you hear, believe half what you see. Many stories that you hear, even from speakers, you have to know if it's 100% accurate. Even the Rebbe, when he used to say a story by Fabrengen, he used to say, you heard it from the Frierdiker Rebbe or not, but it doesn't matter. The Rebbe said it, that's 100%. But you have to be very careful, and this is a lesson that we can learn from this, and especially nowadays that we're learning Pirkei Avos. So this is the type of lesson that we shall learn. Thank you very much. Yom Hashem. Next week we will continue our weekly program. Thank you.